Hello, my dear listeners. Please write in the comments from which city or country you are listening to us, and don't forget to subscribe and like. Enjoy listening. In the heart of Riverwood, a city that once seemed to Arthur Vance the embodiment of his boldest dreams, there now reigned only a ruthless emptiness. Each day resembled the one before. Each step felt like a heavy, unbearable burden. His clothes, once impeccable and tailored, now hung on him like a sack, soiled and worn to tatters. His face, once radiating the confidence of a champion, was now etched with deep wrinkles from constant fatigue, chronic sleeplessness, and all-consuming despair. He was an invisible man, one of many who had lost their way on the cold, indifferent streets. The ghosts of the past haunted him like shadows in twilight. Lena. Her name was engraved not only on the marble tombstone, but in every cell of his being, in every beat of his weary heart. Her infectious laughter, which could chase away any cloud. Her gentle touches that brought him peace. Her promises of a bright future. All of it was now just a painful echo in the empty, chilling corridors of his memory. They met at a charity tournament where she was a volunteer and he was a rising star. Her eyes, full of sincerity, and her light, airy laughter instantly captivated him. She was his anchor, his quiet harbor, his most devoted fan. Lena, who herself was passionate about painting, always told him, "Your movements on the mat are art too, Arthur. You paint strength." They dreamed of a small house with a big garden, of children, of how he would open his own dojo, where he would teach kids not only martial arts but also life wisdom. But then came the illness. At first it was a slight cough, then constant fatigue, and then the diagnosis that struck them like thunder on a clear day. Cancer, a word that shattered their world. He remembered holding her hand in the hospital room, feeling her once strong grip weaken. He remembered her pale face, her eyes filled with fear, yet at the same time, remarkable resilience. He sold everything he had, his championship belts, medals, even his car, to pay for the endless medical bills that grew like weeds after a heavy rain. Each new procedure, each hope that turned into disappointment, drained the last of his strength and resources. He saw her pain, her struggle, and felt utterly helpless. He, the champion who could break 10 boards with one strike, could not save his beloved woman. This feeling of helplessness gnawed at him from within. The medical bills consumed everything he had. The home they had lovingly furnished, the savings they had accumulated for the future, even his pride, all disappeared, leaving him alone with the cold, wet asphalt and the indifference of the world. He remembered the day he was evicted. The cold, piercing rain washed away the remnants of his dignity as he stood on the sidewalk, staring at the locked door of his former home. The smell of dampness and rotting leaves mingled with the acrid scent of his own despair. In his backpack was everything he had left: a few worn, musty clothes, an old faded photograph of Lena that he kept carefully in his chest pocket, and scraps of hope that melted with each passing minute, like snowflakes on a hot palm. He had been a champion once, a martial arts master whose name was known in every dojo, whose victories echoed throughout the state. Now he was nobody. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Hunger became his constant companion, his insides twisted with pain, and the growling in his stomach drowned out all other sounds. Cold became his blanket, penetrating to the bone, making him shiver even on relatively warm days. He learned to find food in trash cans, each time feeling a stab of humiliation. But hunger was stronger. The smell of rotting food mixed with the stench of sewage had become familiar to him. He slept under bridges, curled up in a ball, trying to find some shelter from the wind and rain. He learned to avoid the gazes of passers-by because in their eyes he saw either indifference or disgust, or worse yet, pity. He became invisible, blending into the crowd, watching as families strolled, as couples held hands, as people laughed, unaware of his existence. These scenes caused him almost physical pain, reminding him of what he had lost. "Why me? Why Lena?" he whispered into the darkness. But there was no answer. only the cold wind and the noise of passing cars. One day, passing by an old brick building, he heard strange, rhythmic sounds, dull thuds, sharp exclamations, the sounds of quick, precise movements. It was the Rising Sun Dojo, run by an elderly but surprisingly strong man named Master Kato. The building looked old but well-maintained. Through a dirty but large window, he saw the interior. Worn wooden floors, darkened with time, old photographs on the walls depicting masters of past years, and a faint smell of sweat, wood, and some specific, slightly sweet dust. Arthur stopped, leaning against the cold, rough wall. He watched as children in white kimonos performed katas, their movements clumsy but full of enthusiasm. He felt a pang of nostalgia, almost physical pain. This was a world he had lost, a world in which he was a king. At that moment, the dojo door opened and Master Kaito stepped out, holding a plate of food that emanated a warm, inviting aroma. His gaze fell on Arthur. There was no judgment, no pity in it, only calm, attentive curiosity, as if he saw not a homeless man, but a lost soul in need of help. "Hungry?" Master Kaito asked, his voice low and calm, without a hint of arrogance. He extended the plate. Arthur initially wanted to refuse. His pride still clung to the last crumbs of his former life. He felt shame burning his face, but hunger was stronger. He nodded, took the plate, and began to eat greedily. It was simple food, rice, stewed vegetables, a bit of chicken, but it tasted like the most delicious meal of his life. Each bite was filled not only with nutrients, but with some inexplicable kindness. "I have work if you want," Master Kato said when Arthur finished, placing the empty plate on the ground. "You need to clean the dojo, help with minor repairs. In exchange, food and a place to sleep. On the floor, but under a roof, in warmth." Arthur looked at him, not believing his ears. The offer was simple, without unnecessary words, without questions about his past, without judgment. It was a hand of help he hadn't expected, a ray of light in his hopeless darkness. I can," Arthur croaked, his voice hoarse from long silence and disuse. Thus began a new chapter in Arthur Vance's life. The first days were incredibly hard. His body ached from the unfamiliar physical labor. He washed floors, carried bags of sand, repaired old equipment. Every muscle throbbed, every joint creaked, and his mind was clouded with despair and ghosts of the past. But Master Kato was patient. He did not pressure him, did not demand the impossible, just gave Arthur space and the opportunity to be useful. He often repeated, "The warrior's path begins with purity, purity of body, purity of spirit, purity of space." Slowly, very slowly, Arthur began to recover. He cleaned, washed, repaired. At night, he slept on a thin mattress in the corner of the dojo, listening to the silence and sometimes the quiet footsteps of Master Kaito, who seemed never to sleep, always awake like a guardian. In the morning, he woke before dawn to start work, and each day he felt not only his physical strength returning, but something more important, a sense of purpose. One day, as he swept the training area, his movements were already smoother, almost mechanical. Master Kaito approached him, holding a cup of steaming green tea. "You move like a warrior," he noted, taking a sip. "You have discipline. Have you ever practiced martial arts?" Arthur froze. He didn't want to talk about his past, his titles, his glory. It was too painful, too far from his current reality. "Once," he replied briefly, not raising his eyes. Master Kaito nodded. "I see. You have potential. Do you want to try? Just for yourself." Arthur hesitated. His body was weak, his spirit broken. He felt like a rusty machine. But something in Master Kaito's calm, deep eyes, some spark of understanding, made him agree. The first training sessions were torturous. His muscles burned, his joints creaked. Every strike, every block echoed with pain. But as he immersed himself back into the world of martial arts, he felt something inside him begin to awaken. The movements that once were instinctive now required effort, but each repetition brought him a sense of control, a sense of purpose. He remembered Lena, her words that his movements were an art, and he began to create again. In the dojo, there were children from the Hope Shelter, a local shelter for the homeless. They were as lost as he once was, their eyes filled with fear and uncertainty. Arthur began to help Master Cato with them. At first, he just observed, then he started showing them the correct stances, correcting their movements. The children, initially wary, quickly grew attached to him. In his eyes, they saw not a homeless man, but a teacher who understood them, who saw in them not just children from a shelter, but future warriors. One boy stood out in particular, Ethan, about 10 years old, with eyes full of fear and curiosity. He was shy and clumsy, often stumbling, but there was a spark of remarkable determination in him. Arthur paid special attention to him, patiently explaining each movement, encouraging him when he fell. He saw in Ethan himself who once was just as unsure, but found his path thanks to a mentor. Ethan told Arthur about his little sister, whom he had lost and how he missed her. This touched Arthur deeply, reminding him of his own loss. "Breathe, Ethan. Feel the ground beneath your feet," Arthur said as the boy tried to master a complex stance. "Every movement is not just a movement, it is an expression of your spirit." Ethan slowly but surely progressed, and each of his small victories brought Arthur immense satisfaction. He felt his own heart healing as he saw these children gaining confidence. One day during a demonstration training, Master Cato asked Arthur to demonstrate a strike. He placed a stack of 10 wooden boards in front of him. Arthur looked at them. Once he could break even more with ease, almost without thinking, but now his strength was not what it used to be, and doubt still battled within his soul. He closed his eyes, focused, remembering Master Cato's words. "True strength is not in what you can break, but in what you can endure." He remembered Lena, her smile, her faith in him. He recalled his days on the street, the cold, the hunger, the despair. He remembered how Master Cato had reached out to him. All of this merged into one. He struck. The 10 boards shattered with a deafening crack, the sound echoing through the dojo. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the room erupted with applause and cheers. The children looked at him with wide eyes, their faces glowing with admiration. A video of this moment, filmed by one of the parents, quickly spread across the internet. "Homeless martial arts master stuns the world," the headline screamed. "The return of a legend." Suddenly, Arthur found himself back in the spotlight, but this time it was not the attention he craved. He just wanted to help the children, not to be a sensation, not to be an object of curiosity. He read the comments. Some were full of admiration, others were skeptical. This stirred mixed feelings in him: pride for having accomplished it, and discomfort that his personal struggle had become a public spectacle. 2 weeks later, Master Cato was approached by documentary filmmaker Sarah Jenkins. She didn't want to make a film about the viral video or the homeless hero. She was interested in deeper themes: dignity, resilience, community. She was known for her thoughtful, non-sensational work. "I want to show the real story," she explained to Arthur when they finally met in Master Cato's small office. "Not just what happened, but what it means for you and for the people whose lives you've touched. I'm interested in the journey, not just the outcome." Sarah asked him deep, insightful questions about his losses, his struggles, and what kept him going. He told her about Lena, her illness, his downfall, Master Cato, and the children. During the filming, Sarah captured Arthur training the kids, patiently explaining the movements to them as they laughed and fell. Ethan, though shy in front of the camera, proudly shared how Sensei Vance taught him to be strong. After much deliberation, Arthur agreed to limited participation. The resulting 30-minute film, titled Still Standing, focused mainly on the shelter program and the transformative power of martial arts as a path to self-respect. Arthur's personal story served as context, not spectacle. When the film aired on a national documentary channel, the response was overwhelming. Not a social media sensation, but a quiet, meaningful impact. Shelter programs across the country reached out with inquiries about implementing similar martial arts initiatives. Veteran organizations offered partnerships. Former competitors from tournaments Arthur had participated in before reconnected with him, expressing admiration for his new path. People approached him on the street, not with curiosity, but with respect, thanking him for the inspiration. One email particularly caught Arthur's attention, from David Miller, his former training partner and closest friend from championship days. David and Arthur were inseparable, bonded not only by their passion for martial arts but also by deep friendship. They lost touch after Lena's death when Arthur distanced himself from everyone connected to his past life, immersing himself in his pain. "I saw the documentary," David wrote. "You never stop being the best of us, Arthur. Not because of what you can do on the mat, but because of who you are off it. If you don't mind, I'd like to visit you sometime. It's been too long." The message brought unexpected tears to Arthur's eyes, a connection to his past that felt healing rather than painful. He immediately replied with an invitation. Their meeting was awkward at first. They hugged, and Arthur felt the tension he had carried for years ease a little. They sat in a small cafe near the dojo, and David reminisced about their past training, their shared victories and defeats. "Remember how we prepared for the state championship?" David said, smiling. "You broke 13 boards and I only broke 12. You were always better." "It's not about the number," Arthur replied, echoing words he often told his students. "It's about what you put into the strike." They talked about Lena. David expressed his condolences, and for the first time in a long while, Arthur was able to openly discuss his loss without feeling like he was burdening someone with his pain. This meeting was like a breath of fresh air, a return to a part of himself he thought was lost forever. That evening, Arthur sat at his small dining table, his laptop open in front of him. After several weeks of reflection, he finally agreed to write a guidebook. Not a memoir or a textbook, but a philosophy of resilience, based on both martial arts and his life experience. The writing process was challenging. Thoughts came chaotically, but he felt it was necessary to share what he had learned. He wrote at night when the dojo was quiet, and only the noise of the city outside broke the silence. Sometimes the words flowed easily. Other times he stared at a blank screen for hours, unsure of where to start. But each time he wrote, he felt his pain transform into wisdom. He titled the document, "Still Standing: Lessons from the Mat and the Streets." His fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long time before he began to type. True strength is measured not by what you can break. It is measured by what you can endure and what you choose to build from the rubble. Life is not a series of victories, but a series of lessons. And every time you fall, you get the chance to rise stronger. Exactly 1 year after the day Arthur first performed kata in Master Kaito's dojo, the training hall was filled with students. Once a struggling martial arts school, it now had a waiting list for new enrollments and had expanded its schedule to meet the growing demand. Arthur stood at the front of the class, his black belt now adorned with golden embroidery that identified him as Sensei Vance. The students before him represented a cross-section of the community. Children from affluent families trained alongside scholarship students from the shelter program. Teenagers who once mocked him now listened intently to his teachings, their eyes filled with respect. "Martial arts is not about defeating others," he said, his voice calm yet filled with power. "It is about mastering yourself. Your true opponent is always within. Doubt, fear, anger, complacency. These are the barriers you must break." His teaching style had evolved over the months. He was still patient and precise, but now filled with the quiet confidence of a man who had found his purpose. The transformation went beyond physical appearance, though that was remarkable too. Gone was the gaunt, tortured man who collected cans behind the dumpster. In his place stood a respected teacher, his face relaxed, his eyes clear and focused, radiating calm wisdom. After class, as the students dispersed, Ethan approached with a carefully wrapped gift. He had grown taller, his movements more assured. "This is from all of us, Sensei," he said, his voice slightly trembling with the awkwardness of early adolescence. No longer the little boy who offered a sandwich to a stranger, Ethan had grown several inches and recently earned his green belt. Arthur unwrapped the gift and found a framed photograph of the entire class, lined up in neat rows with him and Master Kaito in the center. Beneath the image was a simple inscription: "The man who showed us what strength looks like." "Thank you," Arthur said, his voice genuinely touched. "This means more to me than you can imagine." Ethan beamed, his eyes shining with pride. "We're having cake in the break room. My mom baked it, chocolate with strawberries. Your favorite." As the celebration continued, Arthur slipped away into a small office he now shared with Master Kaido. On his desk lay a letter that had arrived that morning from Lena's former oncologist, confirming Arthur's final payment on the medical debt that once seemed insurmountable. It was the last heavy stone that had fallen from his soul. He pulled out the worn photograph of Lena that he always carried with him, gently touching her face through the protective plastic. "We made it, Lena," he said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. "We made it." A knock at the door interrupted this personal moment. Master Kaido entered, carrying a small plaque wrapped in cloth. "This is from the contractor," he said. "It's ready when you are." Arthur nodded, carefully returning Lena's photograph to his wallet. Together they approached the main entrance, where a crew of installers was waiting. The new plaque was simple yet elegant, made of dark wood with golden letters. Intended to be placed next to the dojo door, it read, "Strength is not what you break, it is what you endure. Sensei Vance." The workers began the installation, their tools making dull thuds. At that moment, a group of unfamiliar faces entered the dojo. 5 children aged between 8 and 15, accompanied by an elderly woman. Their eyes were filled with caution and fear, but at the same time, timid curiosity. "Can I help you?" asked Master Kaido. "We are from the West Side Shelter," the woman explained, her voice tired yet kind. "These children just joined our program yesterday. They heard about the classes and begged to meet the guy who broke all the boards." Arthur stepped forward, his heart warming. He bowed slightly to the children. "Welcome to the Rising Sun Dojo. I am Sensei Vance." The youngest girl, no older than 8, with bright eyes and tightly braided pigtails, looked at him with unabashed admiration. "Can you teach us to break boards too?" she asked, her voice thin but full of hope. Arthur exchanged a glance with Master Kaido, who nodded encouragingly. "How about we start with the proper stance?" Arthur suggested, leading them to the mat. "Everything begins with a solid foundation. A stance is not just a position of the body, it is a state of mind." To everyone's surprise, Ethan stepped forward. "I can show them the warm-up exercises, Sensei, if that's okay," he said, his voice confident. Arthur nodded, feeling a surge of pride as he watched Ethan begin to guide the newcomers through basic stretches. The boy carefully demonstrated each movement, his instructions clear and patient, a mirror of Arthur's own teaching style. "He's becoming quite a good instructor," Master Kaido quietly remarked. "He has good instincts," Arthur agreed. "He sees the person, not just the student. He sees their potential." As Ethan continued the warm-up, Arthur noticed that the group had attracted attention. Travis and several other advanced students had returned, ostensibly to help with the new children from the shelter, but their focus was on a demonstration that was being prepared in the corner. A young girl, Maya, now 12 years old, the very student Arthur once helped with her kata through the window, was getting ready to attempt to break a board. 9 boards were stacked in the holder. "9?" Arthur asked, stepping closer, his eyebrows raised. "She's been training for a few months, Sensei," Travis explained. "She wants to beat your record." "That's 10 board," Master Kaido corrected, his eyes sparkling. Travis shook his head. "She says 9 is enough. It's not about the number. She says it's about understanding why you do it." Arthur watched as Maya prepared, performing the same concentration ritual he had taught her. Eyes closed, breathing steady, focus inward. He saw her determination, her inner strength. Her technique differed from his, where he used an elbow strike. She took a position for a straight punch, her small fist perfectly aligned. The room fell into complete, ringing silence, so quiet that one could hear the beating of their own heart. She opened her eyes, fixed her gaze on the center of the stack, and struck with unexpected speed and precision. Crack! For a moment, nothing happened. Then all 9 boards cleanly splintered, falling away from the holder as if by magic. The room erupted with deafening applause and excited shouts. Arthur clapped the loudest, his face glowing with genuine, unfeigned pride. Maya turned to him, seeking his approval, her eyes shining. "Perfect form, Maya," he said to her, bowing deeply in respect. "Better than mine. You understood the true meaning." Her face broke into a radiant smile. "I had a good teacher, Sensei." The celebration continued as the news spread throughout the dojo. Parents who had arrived early for the next class joined in the applause. Even Mark Thompson, who had once been skeptical but had gradually come to reluctantly accept Arthur's role, nodded in acknowledgement from the doorway. Later, when the excitement settled and preparations for the next session began, Arthur found a quiet moment with Master Kaido. "Remember when you said that records exist to be broken?" he asked, looking at the new plaque by the door. Master Kaido smiled. "Some do. Others exist to inspire what comes next. Maya is proof of that." "9 boards," Arthur muttered. "She could have done 10. We both know that." "But she understood the real lesson, Arthur," Master Kaido replied. "It was never about the number. It's about what's inside. The spirit, the determination, the understanding of purpose." Arthur nodded, watching as Maya demonstrated her technique to the children from the shelter, their eyes wide with anticipation and possibility. He saw in them not just future students, but future leaders, future warriors. "The real record isn't measured in boards or trophies," Arthur said. "No," Master Kaido agreed, placing a hand on Arthur's shoulder. "It's measured in changed lives, including your own. And this is just the beginning." As evening fell, Arthur walked through the quiet dojo after the last class, turning off the lights and checking that the equipment was stored properly. This routine had become a kind of meditation, a daily ritual marking the transition from teacher back to student. Always learning, always growing. He felt tired, but it was a pleasant tiredness, the fatigue of a job well done. His phone vibrated with a message from David, confirming his visit for the next weekend. Another message followed, a photo from James at the shelter, proudly displaying his official forklift operator certificate. James, once a shy and insecure teenager, had now found his place in the world. Outside, the spring air was mild, smelling of fresh grass and rain. Arthur locked the dojo door, hearing the click of the lock. His apartment was just a 10-minute walk away, a path he had come to love, regardless of the weather. The neighborhood had become familiar territory. Shop owners nodded in recognition, neighbors offered greetings. His presence was no longer a curiosity, but simply part of the fabric of the community. He felt part of something bigger than himself. As he walked, Arthur's thoughts drifted to the documentary film. He recalled the question the filmmakers had asked him during their last interview. "After everything you've been through, what would you say to someone who feels they've lost everything?" His answer then seemed even more true now. "They laughed when I asked for one chance. They saw only a homeless man in me. But life needs just one break, one spark of hope to open up again. And then you realize that everything you've been through has made you stronger." Reaching his apartment building, Arthur paused to look back at the path he had traveled. Not just a strange physical distance from the dojo, but a much longer journey from despair to purpose, from loss to gain, from destruction to creation. The weight of his backpack was comforting on his shoulders. It no longer contained all his worldly possessions, but held lesson plans for the day, student evaluations, and a draft of his upcoming book. He was no longer homeless. He was home. He opened the door to his modest apartment, greeted by the familiar, cozy smell, a blend of freshly brewed coffee and old books. He turned on the light, and the soft warmth filled the room, enveloping him like an invisible blanket. This was not just a dwelling. It was his sanctuary, his fortress, a place where he could be himself. With that thought, Arthur Vance climbed the stairs to his apartment, head held high, moving forward into the life he had rebuilt. One stance, one lesson, one day at a time, and Arthur realized that it was not just about the 10 wooden boards he had broken that day. Much more important was how his own prejudices about human worth had shattered, how he had discovered the path to true strength and hope, which he now carried within himself and shared with others. New chapter, a voice for many, 2 more years passed. The rising sun dojo thrived, becoming a beacon of hope for all of Riverwood. The waiting list for new students stretched for months, and Master Kaito, smiling, said that Arthur now led the dojo more than he did himself. The book Still Standing: Lessons from the Mat in the Streets became a national bestseller, and Sarah Jenkins' documentary won several prestigious awards, including the Silver Screen Award at the International Documentary Film Festival. Arthur was invited to speak at conferences, universities, and national talk shows. He became a voice for those who had once been invisible. This new fame was a trial for Arthur. He did not seek glory. His only goal was to help people. Every time he was introduced on stage, he felt a slight dizziness, and the bright spotlight seemed too dazzling. He, a man who had once hidden in the shadows, now stood in the spotlight. The internal conflict between his humility and the growing responsibility was constant. He struggled with the temptation of pride, reminding himself that all of this was not for him, but for those in need of hope. "Remember, Arthur," Master Kaito would say when Arthur shared his feelings with him, "a tree that grows too quickly breaks in a strong wind. Grow slowly, but strong. Your strength lies in your roots, not in your height." One day after a speech in Washington, a woman named Evelyn Reed approached Arthur. She was the head of the National Renaissance Foundation, a large nonprofit organization focused on rehabilitating veterans and supporting the homeless. Her eyes were full of determination, and her voice exuded confidence. "Sensei Vance," she said, extending her hand, "your story and your philosophy are exactly what our country needs. We want to offer you the chance to lead a new national program, a martial arts program for veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, and to open similar dojos for those in need across the country. This is a huge project, but we believe you are the one who can make it happen." Arthur's heart froze. This was an offer that took him far beyond his beloved dojo. It was a tremendous responsibility, a challenge that seemed almost insurmountable. He felt a familiar stab of doubt. Could he handle such a large task? Was it too far from his true path, from his simple desire to help people one-on-one? "I need to think about it," he replied, his voice slightly hoarse. The next few weeks were filled with internal reflection and long conversations with Master Kaito and David. David, with his business connections, helped Arthur navigate the financial and organizational aspects of the proposal. "This is your chance, Arthur," David said. "A chance to change not dozens, but thousands of lives. Lena would be proud of you." Master Kaito simply listened, sometimes nodding, sometimes asking leading questions. "Your path is a path of service. The size of the field does not change the essence of the seed." In the end, Arthur agreed. He understood that it would not be easy. He faced bureaucracy that seemed like an impenetrable wall, endless paperwork, meetings, protocols, financial constraints that required him to constantly seek compromises, and of course, skepticism. The old guard in the organization, accustomed to traditional rehabilitation methods, looked at the street sensei with distrust. "What can martial arts offer veterans who have been through hell?" they asked, their voices full of doubt. The most challenging part was working with the veterans themselves. Many of them were embittered, disillusioned, and did not trust anyone. One of them, a former Marine named Marcus, with eyes full of pain and anger, refused to participate in the classes. He sat in the corner of the hall, arms crossed, his gaze full of contempt. "What do you know about struggle, kid?" Marcus growled one day as Arthur tried to start the session. "You think your boards mean something? I've seen lives break." Arthur did not respond to anger with anger. He approached Marcus, sat down next to him on the floor, crossing his legs. "I know what loss is," Arthur said quietly. "I know what despair is. I know what it feels like to be invisible. I know what it is to break, but I also know what it is to rise. And I'm not here to teach you to break boards, Marcus. I'm here to help you build something new from what's left." Marcus looked at him, and something like surprise flickered in his eyes. It was the first time someone had spoken to him without pity or judgment. Days turned into weeks. Arthur continued to work patiently, step by step. He held individual conversations with veterans, listened to their stories, shared his own. He showed them how every movement in martial arts is not just a physical action, but a way to gain control over their body and mind. He taught them to breathe, to focus, to find inner peace. And small victories began to come. One veteran suffering from nightmares started to sleep more soundly. Another, who hardly spoke, began to share his thoughts. Marcus, initially reluctant, then with growing interest, started to join the classes. At first, he just observed, then began to perform simple exercises. One day, when Arthur was demonstrating a complex kata, Marcus stood up and, to everyone's surprise, began to mimic the movements. His movements were awkward, but there was a strength in them that had once been hidden beneath layers of pain. This helps," Marcus mumbled after class, his voice hoarse. "I feel something." Arthur smiled. "That's your spirit, Marcus. It was never broken. It just needed to find its way back." The culmination of the program was a national demonstration in Washington, where veterans from across the country who had gone through Arthur's program gathered. They took the stage. Their movements were not perfect, but full of dignity and strength. They performed katas, demonstrated self-defense techniques, and then, at Arthur's request, each of them broke one board. Not 10, not 9, but 1. A symbol of their personal victory over their inner demons. The audience applauded standing. Among the spectators were skeptics from the old guard, their faces expressing shock and admiration. They saw not just physical strength, but a transformation of spirit. After the demonstration, Evelyn Reed approached Arthur, her eyes wet with tears. "You've done the impossible, Sensei Vance," she said. "You didn't just teach them martial arts, you gave them their lives back." Arthur realized that his true strength was not in breaking 10 boards, but in breaking down the walls of despair and prejudice in others. His legacy was now not only in his dojo in Riverwood, but also in the thousands of lives he touched across the country. He had become not just a teacher, but a symbol of hope, living proof that even after the deepest losses, one can find new meaning and build something beautiful from the rubble. His journey continued. He saw his students, like Ethan and Maya, becoming teachers themselves, passing on his philosophy to the next generation. He saw new dojos opening in other cities following his model, offering refuge and purpose to those in need. Each day was a new lesson, a new challenge, a new opportunity to serve. And Arthur Vance, the man who had once lost everything, now knew that he had gained something much greater, an endless path of service and a true home in the hearts of those he had touched.